Okay. So this text was composed by the great master, great Indian pundit and master and great realized being, great saint, Bodhisattva, Shantideva. Shantideva, from an early age, had a very close, very profound relationship with the Bodhisattva Manjushri. And through his practice of the Manjushri sadhana, had many visions of Manjushri and received many teachings on the whole Tripitaka, the whole collection of Bodhisattva Muni's sutra teachings. And then he because he was I won't go into too much detail of his life story. You can find that out in places. But basically, he was a son of a king, and so when his father died, instead of assuming the throne of the king of the area of in India, I think sort of in the Gujarat area, he left and went to Nalanda and took up residence in Nalanda. And again, he had become a very great practitioner, great scholar up until that point. But when he went to Nalanda, then he just practiced meditation and didn't display his erudition or realization to others. He just practiced as a secret yogin, to the point where his fellow monks became basically they just saw that he was just in the way and looked for ways to get him kicked out of Nalanda. And according to the custom there, they regularly, a monk or a scholar would give teachings to the whole assembly. And so they thought that since he was just a nobody and had never showed up for classes and so forth, that they would be able to, that by inviting him to teach, that he would run away before he embarrassed himself by having to teach. And so he refused them several times when they asked him. And so they went to the abbot of Nalanda, of that section of Nalanda, and told the abbot, or requested that the abbot order him to teach, which he did. And surprisingly, Shantideva accepted. And so then to further ensure that he would run away before embarrassing himself, this time they set up a huge, like a whole the throne, big tall throne in the courtyard, so that many local people would come, and all the patrons of Nalanda were going to come, or came. And then they made a very high throne. And so he thought for sure that not only would he not, if he did come, he wouldn't be able to figure out how to get on the throne. It was so high, and then he would just take off. But after everyone assembled, everyone was waiting for him, and then they looked, and he was already sitting on the throne. And he asked them when they finished like what we just did, that kind of thing, and maybe they even used the same sutra text that we use. Then he asked them if they wanted him to teach something, something that they were used to, that they were familiar with, something from the sutras, or would they like to hear something original that they haven't heard before? And so they said something original, because they were, what do you call that? Nonplussed, is that a word? By this time. And so then he recited his text of this text, the Bodhicharyavatara. And when he's, even from the beginning of the text, beginning of his recitation, many of the more advanced members of the community, spiritually advanced members of the community, saw that Manjushri was sitting there next to him. And then when he began teaching the 9th chapter, which is the Prajna chapter, the chapter on sublime knowing, or wisdom chapter, that as he began, or at a certain point, what is it, verse 34, I think, something like that, he began to rise up with Manjushri. They both began rising up until he couldn't be seen anymore, but they still heard the conclusion of the teachings. And then he never came back. Subsequently, when they wrote down, when they recollected and wrote down the teachings, the whole Bodhisattva Charyavatara, there were two. I'm not going to go into the whole textual part of it, but basically there were two versions. One was a little shorter than the other one, and so they sent a delegation out to find Shantideva, which they did. He actually had a very long career, many activities that are documented of his activities, some very yogic activities, all kinds of beneficial activities. But when the scholars went and conferred with him, he went through the text with them and ironed out any discrepancies and put together, or said, okay, this is my text. I mean, this was basically this was his composition, his original text that he used to remind himself of the whole range of Buddhist training. So it's like an easy to remember versification of the whole range of the sutras of the Buddha, and particularly the emphasis is on the Mahayana sutras. the translation that exists today was made into Tibetan from the Sanskrit and translated in the 9th century. So Shantideva, he was like 7th century. Then it got to Tibet, and it was the first, probably, now this is all scholarly, not exactly speculation, what do you say? This is a study of the textual study, but the translator was a great disciple of Guru Padmasambhava Kawapatsek. He was one of the principal translators during that first wave of translating text in Tibet. And since it happened before the destruction of Nalanda, it's considered to be, or it was considered to be one of the most, how do you say, the kind of most germane texts that was subsequently studied at Nalanda as a text, and became included in the Shastras, the commentaries, the Indian commentaries on the Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings. And so it was one of the earlier texts translated into Tibetan. So that's a little bit of the background of the author, and then what the text covers, or what the text is drawn from, which is the Buddha Shakyamuni Sutras, and particularly the Mahayana Sutras. And so that's the source of this teaching. And the subject matter of the text is an explanation of generating bodhicitta and training in the 6 perfections. And it was, again, it was, the title of the text is the Bodhicharyavatara in Sanskrit. In Tibetan, it is Chongchup Sempe Chupala Jukpa. Chongchup Sempa Chupala Jukpa. Chongchup means was translated into Tibetan, or Chongchup is the Tibetan translation of Bodhi. Bodhi, and Bodhi carries with it the idea of, it's the same root as a Buddha. Bodhi means enlightenment or awakened. Buddha, the word Buddha means one who achieved Bodhi, or one who achieved awakening. When the Tibetans translated things, and I'm not going to get tedious about the Tibetan things, but there's some interest there, because in some texts, some of the Sanskrit, they translated literally. By and large, it was a literal translation. Some words were translated according to the meaning, the intention, or the meaning of it. And so Chongchup, as a translation of Bodhi, is more in keeping with the meaning of the word. The Chong, the first syllable, is 2 syllables. The first syllable, Chong, has to do with, Chong means that all impurities have been refined away. So, and particularly impurities here means the twofold veil, the twofold obscurations of kleshas and intellectual, basically are the obscurations to knowing and the obscurations of the kleshas. So Chang means that those have been completely refined away. So it has this sense of purity. Chup, Chang chup, chup is second syllable. Second syllable. Of course, these are words also, Chang. Like Chang as purity also has to do with refining away. Here it means refined, having refined away. Chup is the word means that all the qualities of wisdom have been assimilated or have come forth. And so it has to do with the realization. So one has to do with refining away, and one has to do with the qualities of wisdom that are the ever-present state of awakening. So together, in English we say enlightened, or at least I think in the text and generally speaking, that's a good working meaning of enlightenment. Changchup Sempa. Sem means mind. In English, Sem means mind. Pa Pa in Tibetan also, they translated it originally according to some sense of meaning, because Pa in Tibetan means hero, heroic, courageous. A sattva in Sanskrit Bodhisattva, they say Changchup Sempa, like courageous mind. So courageous mind means one who strives for enlightenment. Because it takes courage because it's difficult. I'm sure we can vouch for that. So Changchup Sempa and Chupa, Charya, the word Charya in Sanskrit is a Chupa, means activity. Activities. So this has to do with all the Bodhisattva activities. And all the Bodhisattva activities are subsumed or included in the 6 paramitas, the 6 we'll call the 6 transcendent perfections. And then Jukpa, the final avatara, means to enter, the entrance, or to enter into. So this text gives the ways and means of how this conduct, how the conduct of a bodhisattva is practiced and how it's perfected. Okay, so here it's the way of the bodhisattva. That's the title of the book that the Pemakara decided on. but it also can mean the entrance way to the conduct of the Bodhisattva. Okay? The text itself has 10 chapters, 10 chapters. And the general, how do I say the general format of how this particular commentary approaches the material, these chapters, is according to the four verses of, or 4-line verses that from the old masters. Possibly some people say it was in the Nagarjuna, it was a prayer of Nagarjuna, and it's Supreme Bodhicitta is so very precious. Where it has not yet arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but evermore grow and flourish. Some Changchub Simbo Rinpoche, that Mate Wabanam, Chedra Chikche Banyamba Meba, Dongone, Gondu Power Shok. And this is these 4 lines where, you know, bodhicitta, where this supreme bodhicitta, which is so precious, has not yet arisen, and in whom this bodhicitta has not yet arisen, may it arise. For someone who has given rise to bodhicitta, may it not decline, but flourish into complete and perfect, unsurpassable enlightenment. That's the meaning of those 4 lines. And so the text it's a text. This is a manual. It's a commentary on those 4 lines, we could say. The first 3 chapters have to do with giving rise to how to make bodhicitta come forth when it's not there. And then the second 3 chapters, the 4th, 5th, 6th chapter, is how not to let it become corrupted, how not to let it decline. And then the 9th, 8th, and 7th chapters, I usually say 7th, 8th, and 9th chapters, have to do with, that's a diligence, meditative concentration, and wisdom chapter. These 3 chapters are the means by which that bodhicitta flourishes and reaches perfection. And the 10th chapter is a dedication. It's a dedication of the merit of the text, of the composition. So that's an overview of the contents. So this first chapter, if you have it, is the title that's given here is The Excellence of Bodhicitta. And the first line says, homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This, and as you can see, it sort of stands apart from the verses, because this is the translator's homage. This was inserted by the two translators, of course, the two usually in the when the sutra, when the sutras and tantras were translated into Tibetan, the Tibetans worked always with an Indian pundit. And so the Indian pundit of this, who worked with Kawa Paltsek, was the Sarvajna Devi, who was one of the great pundits who came to Tibet at that time, 9th century, 8th, 9th century. And so these two were the translators, and so they, as a way of ensuring the success of their translation, then they inserted this homage to it says homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. These lines, I think it was at a certain point the king, the Dharma king, mandated that the translators would pay homage at the beginning. I don't know when that started, but you can tell what the what category of text a text is by who they pay homage to. So that here, when it says they're paying homage to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, you know that it's from the Sutra Pitaka, the collection of sutras. And the sutras, usually the sutras typically were in the form of questions and answers to Buddha Shakyamuni. Here then the commentary goes into quite a long teaching on what Buddha means. And Buddha, similarly to Bodhi, was translating according to the meaning. And in the Tibetan, it's the two words, Sonje. Sonje. Song, again, refers to, here, song particularly means awakened from sleep, or awakened. Free of ignorance. And J means that all that can be known is known. That the blossoming of wisdom has occurred, that everything that's known is known. So it's this kind of two, just like when we wake up in the morning, two things happen. First, waking up indicates that we're no longer under the influence of the delusion of sleep. That's one experience we have. I don't know how long we dwell in that realization, but the second experience of waking up is that you perceive and you begin to understand what's there. And your whole identity and your whole the colors and shapes around you all become instantly, well, maybe not so instantly, but imminently known by you. So there's these two aspects of no longer under the influence of sleep, and the beginning of your knowing quality begins to understand where you are, and so forth. So similarly, Sonje, Buddha, here means no longer under the influence of ignorance, and fully endowed with the wisdom of knowing everything, all knowable, everything knowable, this kind of quality. So this is the meaning of the Buddhas. And then, of course, here the Bodhisattvas are those who oftentimes ask the Buddha questions. And they are the heirs, the inheritors of the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, then Shantideva, the, what is it, 1, 2, 3, the first 3 verses are his, and are, these are the, there's these 4 traditional elements that that are set out at the beginning of any comment, or any composition or commentary, and they have, each one of these elements has a purpose. So here Shantideva first says, to those who go in bliss, the Dharmakaya they possess, and all their heirs, to all those worthy of respect, I reverently bow. So this is Shantideva's homage. With great devotion and respect, he is placing the, well here, those who go in bliss, and maybe you've seen this word also, a lot of times it's not translated as that, but it's the Sugata. Sugata is a common, what is that, epithet? Epithet is a common name for Buddha, is a Sugata. And that's what the original is there. They translated it into who go in bliss, which is correct. Sugata. Su, the syllable su means bliss. It also means beautifully, or well, you do it well. And then gata, the second syllable of sugata, the gata means to go. It means goes, can mean goes or gone. Sometimes it's put into the English as those who have gone to bliss, or who have arrived at a state of bliss. Generally, here deshek and dewa shekpa means to go in bliss, or to go kind of beautifully. I think Chakta Rinpoche, when he was explaining that once to me, he said, what did he say? Easy way going, he said. Easy way going. He moves his hand like this, I remember. Easy way going. And that indicates there's three indications here. There's sugata can mean one who proceeds well, meaning unstained by any flaw. The flaw of suffering and the causes of suffering, unstained by those flaws. So they're different than samsarika beings. That's what going well means in that sense. Then also it indicates going without ever turning back, because self-clinging has been completely and thoroughly uprooted, that there is no basis, there's no way There's no basis for entering back into samsara as a suffering experience. There's no, what is it called? No reverting. The metaphor is just like someone who has, once you've had smallpox, then you don't get it again. And so this is this way of going without turning back idea. Sugata means not turning back. And then the third indication here is going completely. Goes completely. All that needs to be eliminated has been eliminated completely. All that can be realized has been realized completely. There's not the slightest detail that isn't brought into the scope of realization. So one who proceeds well, one who goes without ever turning back, and one who completely goes, Sugata. In the Heart Sutra, we hear the mantra there, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisattva, gone, gone, gone beyond, and so forth. It's the same idea, or same use of that word, Gata, Sugata, so like that. So here he says, to those who go in bliss, to the Sugatas, meaning Buddhas, to those who go in bliss. And then here the Dharmakaya. Here Dharmakaya refers to Kaya, of course, means form, or the form, the body of Dharma, or the dimension of Dharma, depending on the circumstance, depending on the context. But here, according to the commentary, it really refers to the twofold, the two aspects of the sacred Dharma, the holy Dharma, the Dharma of realization and the Dharma of transmission. Basically, the reference here is that the realization that the Dharma of realization is to realize the Dharma Dhatu, realizing the true nature of phenomena, the realm of phenomena, and the cause of that, which are the teachings that lead to the realization of Dharma Dhatu. Okay. And those teachings are what are called the vast and deep, the vast and profound teachings that lead to the realization of the true nature of phenomena. The Dharmakaya they possess. And then all their heirs. Okay, so all their heirs, which refers again to the Bodhisattvas. In this case, he's paying homage to the exalted Sangha, the 8th, 9th, 10th levels, or maybe all those who have reached the first level to the 10th level, those Bodhisattvas he's paying homage to. He's giving his respect and honoring those. And then he goes on in the second line to all those worthy of respect. All those worthy of respect. So this includes the Shravakas, those who realized the Dharma through listening, the Pratyeka Buddhas, those who heard the teachings and have nurtured it in their individually and become free of or have realized the some levels of non-self, these Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, and also the Arhats, and of course he's talking here to the great masters of Nalanda. So all those, he says, all those worthy of respect, all the monks and nuns, and all those, even the sponsors, those are all those who he bows to as objects of homage, objects of veneration and respect. So it's a very beautiful way of beginning a text. This way of beginning a text is it's said that this way of beginning a text by paying homage in this way assures that the text, the meaning of the text, will be properly received for a long time, just through the interdependence. Okay, that was a homage. That's typically, traditionally, that's the first point of the text. And the verse continues here, according to the scriptures, I shall now in brief describe the practice of the Bodhisattva discipline. Okay, so according to the vast number of scriptures, again, he was very learned in all the teachings of the Tripitaka. Tripitaka means the three baskets of the Vinaya, the Sutra, and the Abhidharma. And so according to those teachings, now I'm going to synthesize, or say condense them all. Here in the commentary says, because of course this is 9th century Nalanda, says the modern people don't have time or vigor to study all the sutras. So for the sake of modern people, he's condensing it all down in sort of a device to connect you with the vast and profound teachings of Buddha, particularly the practice of the Bodhisattva discipline. So there's not a lot of, this is mostly about advice on the practice of the Bodhisattva path. Yeah. And so these two lines, according to the scriptures, as I now in brief describe the practice of the Bodhisattva discipline, this is an author's commitment. He's making, okay, this is what I'm going to compose. I'm going to compose a text based on the scriptures. And the text will be about the Bodhisattva, the practice of the Bodhisattva conduct, discipline. So now he's put it out there that that's what he's going to do. So there's some sense of having to, when you make a commitment like that here, it assures that will be carried out. We read in places where bodhisattvas don't make a lot of promises. They took one pledge to attain enlightenment. That's one promise. But on a day-to-day level, they don't make a lot of promises. They save promises. And so here, he's promising to compose this text. So it has some weight. Okay, then second second verse here. He says, and then he's already told the congregation that he's going to recite the Bodhicharyavatara. So he's saying, here I shall say nothing that has not been said before, and in the art of prosody I have no skill. This is the not declaration. This is a statement that of Shantideva's humility. Like, I don't know how, I'm not very good at poetry. I think prosody, I actually had to look it up at one time. Means being able to do verses, poetry. So he says, I don't have the skill at that. And I'm not making anything up new. I'm not creating something new. And so he's not saying that he's going to, basically his humility is in not being able to write well, not being able to compose beautiful things, and not having much intellectual capacity. Because there's nothing, you've heard it all before, nothing new is coming from me. Not only is nothing new, am I not saying anything new, I'm not very good at saying it. So he has no skill. So this is his humility. So why is he doing it? So he says, I therefore have no thought that this might be of benefit to others. I'm not claiming that what I'm saying is going to benefit anyone. Basically, I wrote it only for my own personal meditation, to remind me, and for my practice of the bodhicitta, to become motivated in my practice of bodhicitta. That was my intention in composing this text. So he says then to kind of not wallow in his humility and become to disparage himself or to become, to denigrate himself. He goes on in the next verse to say, my faith will thus be strengthened for a little while. And so his faith, that is to say, faith here means his vivid faith, which is the kind of faith that feels joyful at hearing the teachings, at reading the teachings, at seeing an image of enlightenment, being in the presence of a teacher and receiving teaching. This kind of faith is called vivid faith. And it's the kind that for no reason maybe makes you kind of get what is that word? Horripilations, goosebumps, or tears. Your eyes get wet. This kind, or they stream down your face as your vivid faith, kind of little unexplainable, just in the mere presence of the teachings or the forms or so forth, that kind of faith. And then there's the kind of faith that we really need, because that vivid faith also kind of has a shelf life, especially for all of us, maybe all of us. We've all sort of, so we've all sort of converted because of vivid faith. Something came. We saw something, heard something, or maybe even smelled something, incense, something, something triggered. It's whether karmic or just some kind of interdependence, and for no reason at all, you're a goner in a Buddhism, you know. So this kind of vivid faith, then you have to move with that faith to emulate those qualities that you have been exposed to. It's called yearning faith. It moves you into almost experimenting on yourself with it. And that increases your desire to accomplish it. It begins to occur to you that Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, great enlightened masters, all the words of the Dharma, they're not only out there, but that they can get into you, they can get into your mind. And that is that's empowered by this faith called yearning faith. And then others to connect your own sense of your own hidden, possibly inner qualities with those that you are experiencing outwardly. So taking refuge is a good example of how to increase that faith by we're not necessarily so sure culturally or psychologically what Buddha means, but there is some inner sense of it that taking refuge connects with. And then this yearning faith isn't, now we're no longer just admiring the Dharma, but we've taken refuge in it. We've kind of built up an intimate relationship or an inner relationship with the Dharma. And then that we, by continuing to understand refuge, to meditate on refuge, to basically to take refuge, then our confident faith develops. We begin to have an inner confidence in trusting the teachings and the teachers. So this kind of faith, this is what Shantideva is talking about. That his faith will transform and go deeper. And then there's a fourth faith called unchanging faith, or irreversible, unchangeable or irreversible faith. So it's like I say, it's like when you finally dislodge a rock at the top of a hill. Through all these previous faiths, you've kind of finally dislodged it to the point where it's going on its own, and even if you wanted to stop it, you can't. So at first, we have this admiration for enlightenment, say, and then we realize that there's a path. It's not just out there, but there's a relationship that will bring it about, and then this confidence develops and the complete trust, and then that faith becomes what's called irreversible faith. So that even if you decide that you don't want to become enlightened, you'll still become enlightened. There's no way you won't. That's called irreversible faith. So my faith, those kinds of faith will be strengthened for a little while. In other words, as he hears this and as he meditates on this, and he'll become accustomed to this virtuous way, which is practicing and thinking about and practicing bodhicitta. You know, we need to become accustomed to it. And we'll talk a lot more about that, certainly. But that's why he composed this text. So it's very likely that he would recite this text to himself regularly. And then he goes on to say, but others who now chance upon my words. So first it was about his so that he would grow accustomed to it. And now, thinking in terms of others, they may come across this text and they may profit from it also. They equal to myself in fortune, he says. So somebody who, like me, has an interest in bodhicitta, has a similar, who has a karma, the same kind of karma as him. Like those kind of people, then they will benefit from them. So these last verses here are really, and when we read it and study it, or when we repeat it ourselves, we should apply or make ourselves joyful here. You know, at this point, that's the idea of this. It's to become sort of joyful and enthusiastic at practicing such a thing as bodhicitta. If we're sad or feeling I don't know, overwhelmed or depressed, we become lazy. That's well known, obviously. Or if you're arrogant, also, then you also become lazy. That is, you're not practicing with the right spirit. And we won't gain the good qualities that come from gaining a greater and greater familiarity with bodhicitta. But here we're talking about bodhicitta, giving rise to bodhicitta. And yeah. So it's important to not impede the generating of bodhicitta by feeling down about yourself or depressed or overwhelmed or this is way beyond my reach. And especially sometimes Dharma is the word Dharma means a thing, right? A thing, a phenomena. And the teaching, the sutras, and this text and so forth is a Dharma, meaning it's a thing, it's a phenomena. It happens to be a phenomena that leads to liberation. So we categorize it as a sacred Dharma because of what it offers. But it's still a thing, a phenomena. So the Buddha Dharma is like Buddha's thing. And there's a lot of it, vast and deep, vast and profound. So we need to be smart and know when to apply certain teachings that we may have received. And so we need to know our what's appropriate. If we're feeling a certain way, we might want to read about the incredible deeds of the Bodhisattvas and feel very inspired. If we're feeling another certain way and we read the deeds of the Bodhisattvas, we might feel very depressed. And like, that's so far from me, maybe I'll just go into real estate, where I might have some success, or I'll, become a yoga instructor or something, which I think is great, by the way. Real estate and yoga instruction. No, actually, right now I do not feel that way. Real estate. Yeah. Right. So then we need to know when to boost our morale and when to lower our what do you call it? Do something about our pride. These two things. So we need to be smart. So that's why Shantideva, he says, I've got this amazing teachings and now it's for you. No, he didn't say that. He said, well, for me, just repeating this makes me feel as though I'm gaining some familiarity with the bodhicitta just by repeating it. If you happen to overhear me or if you happen to be there, then that's beautiful. And then it's for you because we have the same karma. See? So, well, one whole chapter is about joy, so I'm not going to go on and on, okay? All right, so now we're at the end of verse 3, which is the, so basically verse 4 can be, okay, now we're going into the text that Shantideva preluded with these beginning attitudes, okay? Bodhicitta. So, and this is about bodhicitta where it hasn't arisen yet. And by where it hasn't arisen yet, where means a person. Let's say the reader. It's a safe harbor to say that. It's the reader. Where bodhicitta hasn't arisen in me, may it arise. It's wonderful when we say others, thinking in terms of others. But here, what is it that's required to develop bodhicitta? These next two verses are concerned, or Shantideva is explaining right at the outset. Okay, bodhicitta, what is it that is the basis for giving rise to bodhicitta where it hasn't arisen yet? According to the teaching, the Mahayana teachings, we know it's a well-known view of the Mahayana is that all sentient beings, all those who have a mind, that the nature of that mind is already Buddha. A basic Mahayana view. When that mind that is already, that never has not been enlightened, when that mind that never has been anything other than absolutely pure, when that mind, by that owner of that mind, realizes that mind, recognizes and accomplishes and realizes that mind, then that mind owner becomes Buddha, a Buddha, becomes enlightened. It all hinges on recognition and gaining familiarity with that which has been recognized until all the temporary obscuring factors no longer prevail. Just like we get some suspicion before dawn when there's a little bit of light on the horizon. We can boldly say, oh, night is ending. And then it's just a question of getting more and more and more and more used to that. Nothing new has happened. So, if that's the case for all beings, then what is it that will enable an individual to accomplish that kind of recognition and bring it to full maturity of perfect enlightenment? Who can do that? You know? Wait a minute. Because it takes a certain, because it takes effort directed in a certain way, not everyone, not all sentient beings in the short term will realize that. First of all, you have to hear about it. So you need certain faculties. And maybe, of course, Buddhas, they may teach, it says for every sentient being there's a Dharma that's taught by a Buddha for them. You know, that may be the case. Nonetheless, from our point of view, then Buddha Shakyamuni is our Buddha. And he taught words with sentences, structures, and so forth that conveyed meaning. Those teachings are the the steps to awakening. And so a person needs to, or a mind owner, I don't know if that's a sentient being, a being, because I don't know if there's such a thing as a being that's not sentient. But a being needs to be able to comprehend that there's something, that there is a certain direction that their effort can be applied to that will benefit their mind, that will uncover their mind. And they have to care. And so forth, many things, many elements there. So anyway, it's quite well known that that the basis for developing bodhicitta is precious human birth, precious human body. And I'm sure you've all, I hope you've all, or because I'm not going to go too, you know, it's a wonderful teaching, and it's also covered later on too. But that's what he's referring here to in the fourth verse, to that the required basis is a human body, not just any old human body. But it says here, so hard to find the ease and wealth. Ease and wealth. We need to have we need to have. Oh, okay. So hard to find the ease and wealth whereby the aims of beings may be gained. So this ease and wealth here refers to the freedoms and the opportunities or advantages. The 8, particularly from a category point of view, there's the 8 freedoms and the 5 advantages that relate to oneself, and the 5 advantages that relate to the environment. And these, so that is to say, there has to be an absence of certain unfavorable conditions for you to be able to practice what is meaningful. And some births, some human births and other births in the whatever realms that are happening, animals and spirits and godly experiences and so forth, godly realms. Some realms, some karmic fruition is just too distracting. Too much suffering, too much happiness. Our human birth is a little bit of everything. You know, from this groggy, stupid way that we get out of bed in the morning, and then the first meal of the day, and then the whole process of a day. We traverse many realms, don't we? So the purpose of life is to, or we could say, yeah, the meaning of life is to achieve enlightenment. That way, the aims of all beings are achieved. In order to achieve enlightenment, you can't be suffering too much, because you have no perspective, perspective. And you can't be too much pleasure. Even we Dharma people, we're in a good mood, and then Dharma goes out the window. Why practice? I feel good. I should enjoy myself. So imagine if that goes on for, tens of millions of years of just the fruition of amazingly special to you karma. Why would you care about anyone else? That's their problem. You don't. That's one of the flaws of the God realm. They say this precious human birth is better than any other form of birth. We have the cognitive ability to penetrate subtle points of the teachings, psychology, philosophy. We can move through and develop and purify our ignorance and our karma and our afflictive emotions, our kleshas, and cut our habitual tendencies again and again through volition, through knowledge, through learning how, and so forth and so on. So we need to be somewhat free, just like we're all free right now, whatever time it is where you are, you have the freedom. And even though we're experiencing a darn like pandemic, if you can believe it. You know, there's like a pandemic. Here we are, you know, such as it is. Sangha means a gathering. And here we are, we're gathering, you know. So in the midst of what would be, what obviously is the fruition of the suffering, which is the fruition of unwholesome causes, negative causes that isolate us or that terrorize us and we're scared and all these things and other accessory upheavals. But even in the midst of all that, well, there's the good karma of still being, basically we're all taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha here together as a gathering. That's a precious human opportunity, precious human existence. And so anyway, I'm sure you know, and I'd be happy to spend a few hours outlining and going through the 8 freedoms and 10 advantages. But the idea here is, Shantideva is presenting that it takes a certain incarnation, a certain form to practice what's meaningful, and that is a human form that is wherein a human form wherein adverse circumstances are absent. And that human form, within that human form, the certain advantageous circumstances are present. Personally, like you're human, all your cognitive abilities are functioning, your perceptions are reasonable, and you know, we're here. We have Zoom. You know, that's a new category of outer opportunities. You know, and we had this is a time of the Buddha came during our spiritual historical period, and he taught. Sometimes Buddhists don't teach, you know, so that's the problem. There's no karma. No disciples. Nobody has the karma at that time, as for some Buddhas. So a Buddha comes, attains enlightenment, and then passes into nirvana. No one supplicates them to teach or to begs them not to pass into nirvana and so forth. So this happened for us, and we have some spiritual sensitivity, wherewith we respond to the teachings, have some kind of karmic circumstance. So like this. Anyway, so this is so hard to find. Hard to find. That's an operative word there. Don't just gloss over it. The hard to find, like the cause of a precious human birth with all its freedoms and advantages. The cause is difficult. The cause is virtue, virtuous conduct. There's the virtuous conduct that is simply the virtue of avoiding negative conduct. That's virtue. That's one kind of virtue that results in freedom, being, you know, having the unfavorable circumstances absent, is through your effort at avoiding, renouncing, seeing the flaws of negative actions and refraining, that virtue. Not only that, but some infusion of our conduct, our virtuous conduct, some infusion of the paramita quality. This one. The 6 perfections. Those kinds of positive steps at virtue are what give rise to the effect of the advantages side, the 10 advantages, the outer and personal opportunities or advantages. This comes from like intentionally practicing virtue. And the whole causative aggregation of our virtue is kind of connected or held together by our aspirations, pure aspirations for enlightenment. Those 3 elements, those pure ethical conduct, paramitas, and our pure aspirations, those are what give rise, or those are what result in precious human, what we call precious human body. And that's not easy. And there's many examples in the sutras, as you, and I think later on also Shantideva mentions the one with the sleeping turtle who wakes up every 100 years and surfaces for air and then goes back down again. And there's a ring floating on the surface of this great vast ocean. And his chances of putting his head through that ring when he surfaces every 100 years is better than attaining the precious human birth, or is more likely. A turtle is more likely to be able to put its head through that ring than to attain a precious human birth. So these sort of things spur our energy and our diligence into using our life as it can be, to achieve our potential. And what can we achieve? Like, if now I fail to turn it to my profit, here means if I fail now to engage in meaningful actions that will ensure either a continuance of a higher rebirth through my actions, minimal, that's the minimal, or liberation from samsara, pretty good, or complete enlightenment. Those are the three achievements that we can attain in this life. So, because of impermanence, then the final line there says, how could such a chance be mine again? This excellent opportunity, this golden opportunity to engage in what's ultimately and relatively meaningful, it's very unlikely, since if I squander the wealth that I have inherited from my previous virtuous actions and so forth, if I fritter away this life, then it probably I'll be lost in samsara. So we need to turn our mind to what's meaningful and to weigh, because we have the precious human birth means that we can analyze, we can examine and come to conclusions and follow those conclusions that even though they're not our habit, even though they're not what has become what we think of as an instinct. An instinct is I don't know the full meaning of instinct, but basically habits can be instinctual. Well, that's not a big deal to say. Of course, we know that. Post-traumatic events or post-traumatic experiences are like instincts because of habits from trauma and so forth. So it's nothing too big deal to say, but by using our ability to know, which is a quality of precious human birth, we can decide what is advantageous and what is disadvantageous, and decide to follow what's advantageous and to diminish or to see the fault of what's disadvantageous, and change our what do we call these days? Change our trajectory. Okay, that. Okay, then this second section of that is on the top is verse 5. So I'm gonna. This is kind of these 2 points are linked. So I want to finish them. I thought I'd be way done here. So the first verse 4 is about the body is the basis for the development of bodhicitta. The second point is here the mind. Just as on a dark night black with clouds, the sudden lightning glares and all is clearly shown, likewise rarely through the Buddha's power, virtuous thoughts rise, brief and transient in the world. So here we are. This is mind, sort of addicted to self-indulgence, non-virtue, ignorance. Don't know which way to turn. Every day, how many times we wonder, what the heck should I do in this circumstance? How many times? So that's what's called a dark night. Dark night, when it's too dark to see anything. That's our ignorance. And so just like that, that's the mind of all beings without wisdom. Particularly here he says, that is the mind of all beings without yeshe, without jnana, without timeless awareness, without the wisdom of the mind's nature. It's a darkness. That's the condition of all beings. And it's not only are we in ignorance because it's a black night, but there's clouds on top of it all. Within that darkness are clouds, which have to do with our obscurations of the kleshas, our afflictive emotions. Afflictive emotions. Or afflictive mental states. Like I'm going to use afflictive mental states. Pride, jealousy, envy, clinging, attachment, hatred, aversion, ignorance, or mistakenness. All these are mental afflictions. Doubt, all these kinds. So these are the clouds. So not only is it dark and ignorance, but then there's also these clouds. So that's our condition. That's the condition. And suddenly, lightning strikes, and for just a brief minute, a brief instant, we get a glimpse of something. And everything just immediately lights up clearly, and then disappears again. So he's saying that just like that, this has to do with our mind, ignorance, our clashes, our afflictive mental states, and so forth. So likewise, rarely through the Buddha's power, that is to say, through the illumination of their bodhicitta, through that quality of the bodhicitta, and the aspirations of the Buddha when they were bodhisattvas. The bodhisattvas, all these aspirations. So through the force of that power of bodhicitta and the aspirations of the bodhisattva, and interdependent with the merit of sentient beings, of beings, or beings, every once in a while, the desire to do something good occurs. A positive, virtuous thought arises. That's there, brief and transient in the world. So the message there is to contemplate that, and then make a resolution that in that case, I have this, I'm reading this book, so that's virtuous. I should cling to that virtue. We have to learn to cling to virtue right now. And the commentary uses the example of like a blind person finds the end of a tail of a cow. You know, I know we're not pastoral folk, I don't think, but that's the example. A blind person, once they grab hold of the tail of a cow, then it's just a question of time before they'll go back. They might spend many days outside, but hold on to that, because once you lose it, you're gone. You're back in the darkness again. That's what Shantideva is. That's his injunction here. Practice. Practice. You must. And don't be concerned about, like in the commentary it says, don't ask your father for permission to practice. Don't consult with your friends. Don't ask your mother if you can go practice. Leave your crops in the field to go dry. Just practice. Be independent, not like a yak. They have the nose, the ring in their nose to control them with a rope on it. This kind of thing. I think many countries they have water buffaloes and things like that. Somebody invented that. Think animals will respond to that. They say, don't give the rope on the ring of your nose to anybody else, and tie it around your own neck. That idea. Don't check about whether you should practice. So that's the message of that verse. A very long description of the hardcore Kadampa style of practicing. I'm not even gonna go there. It might be too upsetting, the expectations that the Kadampas placed on themselves, But basically there's with bodhicitta, with my practice of bodhicitta, then whatever happens, let it happen. I have my practice of bodhicitta, then whatever happens, let it happen. As long as I have my bodhicitta practice, then the situation, whatever situation I'm in, is fine. That idea. And then as long as I have bodhicitta, I don't need anything. There's one great master, Tsongpa Gyare. These are called his 3 fierce mantras. The 3 fierce mantras of this old ancient, this Kadampa. Whatever has to happen, then let it happen. Whatever the situation is fine. And as long as I have my bodhicitta practice, then I don't need anything. That's, that kind. Anyway, that's a sample, a taste, something to think about. But the conclusion that Shantideva is emphasizing here is virtuous thoughts rise brief and transient in the world, like 1 out of 100, maybe 1 or 2 out of 1,000 thoughts are virtuous, he says in the commentary there. So intentionally practice bodhicitta, practice virtue intentionally. We're all good people. So when we read or see things, or when something is right there, we have good reactions. Empathetic, sympathetic. We have some skills or some, we have $1 or thing, so we react in virtuous ways. But also then make new virtue. That takes effort and practice. And so we have to have a reason. It's not just to be a good person or, oh, that's my instinct is to, give my seat to an old person or whatever. That's just habit. But practicing bodhicitta is a constant creative effort in maintaining this attitude of all beings must attain enlightenment. And I'll do anything I can to ensure that occurs. And I'll use this life for that purpose. That's the idea here. If we can create that in moments of when we're kind of relaxed, when we're like when we read this, I invite you to suggest you read this again and again during the week, and then do it right at that moment, because that might be one of the few times that you actually can do it. I mean, we have that aspiration in the morning, but by noon, we've got lots of other things going on. And that's just, that's just life. So when we need to direct our mind at various times into that appreciation here, appreciation of the precious human birth, and appreciation of your ability to generate new virtue. That's the idea here. Okay, now I'll end with that. Then we'll start in 2 weeks. Seems like a long time with the rest of it. Some places we'll move along probably. Some places I just can't help but kind of unpack. If you send your email address, did I say this before? If you send your email address to us here, events@chakdugompa.org, then we can send you the opening and closing prayers. And right now, just as because it's late, and I don't know how late it is for some of you. It can be shocking. It might be shockingly late for some of you, but get used to it. We'll recite the 10th chapter. 10th chapter, my text 163, and it's a dedication chapter. So we'll recite the first 3 the first, second, and third verses of the 10th chapter, okay, as a dedication. So dedication, you need to reflect on the virtue that over the last few hours, the virtue of looking and this, I don't know what this the screens and the whole pictures and things like that, whatever virtue there is in that, that's something. And then your ability to avoid distractions, because you're not in like some place like that, where there's not a lot of distraction. You're in your old familiar haunt there, your house, all kinds of familiar smells and things drawing your attention possibly. So all the virtue that you were able to bring to your attention and to the teachings, then that's what you're going to be dedicating. And all the virtue that you've ever in your whole life, which is huge, by the way, because of your circumstances just tonight. All the virtue of your life that you've done, and all the virtue of everyone you know, every good person you know, and even a little bit of virtue that people who are behaving badly, they care for their dog, or they care for their cat, or they care for their fish or something. So then they have a heart also. So their virtue, and all the virtue of the bodhisattvas throughout the 3 times. You can dedicate all the virtue you're going to do tomorrow, right now, and the day, all in your future lives, all that virtue, dedicate it now, okay? So think that way for a second or two. Okay. By all the virtue I have now amassed by composition of this book, which speaks of entry to the Bodhisattva way, may every being tread the path to Buddhahood. May beings everywhere who suffer torment in their minds and bodies have, by virtue of my merit, joy and happiness in boundless measure. As long as they may linger in samsara, may their joy be undiminished. May they taste of unsurpassed beatitude in constant and unbroken continuity. May the teachings of Lord Buddha, the only source of benefit and happiness, long remain in this world. May the lives of all those who uphold the Buddha's teachings be as stable as the victory banner. Supreme Bodhicitta is so very precious. Where it has not yet arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but evermore grow and flourish. Okay.